صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ومولاي يا رسول الله وعلى آلك المظلومين صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا أبا عبد الله يا مظلوم يا غريب كربلاء لعن الله الظالمين لكم يا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز فوزا عظيما صلوات
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Before we begin the lecture, I would like everyone to join me in an exercise to do with tonight's talk. If everyone could close their eyes and think of a white room with no windows and with no doors, a white room and only you are in there. Contemplate over yourself in this room on your own in silence for 1 minute. صلى على محمد وآل محمد.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
I want you to think of the feelings you had in that room. This is a psychological exercise in which the room represents your grave. And so the feelings that you had in the room, they say after the exercise that the feelings represent how you feel about death and the grave. And I want you, if you had those feelings, to keep them with you as we discuss tonight's topic on the one thing that we are all promised, that each and every single one of us will taste death. That there will come a day where every single person in this room will not be here anymore. There was a day, maybe 100 years ago, where some people were walking by this very land that we are sitting on right now, that we're discussing this topic of death, and they are no longer here. And now it's our turn, and we are sitting down together, and we are talking and discussing death. And in 100 years from now, not one of us will be here. Unless you're going to be very, very old, 100 and something. Maybe the younger ones, 110 years old. So when you think of the world carrying on without you, just imagine it. It's a scary thought. It's a scary thought because there are several different types of deaths. And your ego is scared to die. The ego, the I inside all of us, does not want to die. And so there are several types of death before the death of our bodies. There are deaths of the heart. There are deaths of the eye. And so if we're going to discuss the deaths of the heart, or if you want to call it the psychological death, in these places that we live in these countries, it kills us very early. We're still alive, our bodies are alive, but we as people, our lives die. So in a saying in America, they say, in America, we live until we're 75, but we die at 25. Because after 25 years old, there's nothing left to live for anymore. In the way that we're living in a capitalistic society where there is no meaning truly to life. And if you ask yourselves right now, am I living that kind of life where I don't have any meaning really to look forward to? Where it's just one goal accomplished after another for no reason. What's it really for? And so you reach these stages where everything becomes a routine. Where you are emotionally dead even to people around you. You find it, these days we see husbands and wives emotionally dead to each other, right? They're still alive, but they're emotionally dead. Or everything is just robotic. On the way to work, you put the radio on, you have your coffee, you come back at 5 o'clock, you do what you have to do, you go to sleep, you wait till Saturday you go to a party, Sunday you forgot what happened, Monday you start again. This is a death in itself. This is a death in itself, although the body is alive, right? Because the heart is dead. And the heart is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to protect us with. And when I'm talking about the heart, I'm not so much talking about the organ, although the organ is the symbol of the heart. The true heart that I'm talking about is that the qalb that takes us towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But let's use the symbol of the heart. Look how much Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala focuses on the qalb and where He's put it behind the sternum, the strongest part of your body. And then He put it around the rib cage, right? He put it in a cage to protect it. He's trying to show you how much you should protect this heart. Do not let this heart die. This heart should be protected. Look at how, for example, that is compared to the genitals, where it's out there in martial arts, that's the first thing you go for. There is no protection because it's the lower base animalistic part of yourself. Yet on your upper body, subhanAllah as well, look, lower body, upper body, right? What should reign over the other? And it's protected. And Allah wants you to protect it. But we let so much corruption enter into our hearts and kill it. And narrations say, if your heart dies, if your heart is sick, all of you will be sick. And if your heart is healthy, you will be healthy. So your heart is the leader of where you're going in life. If your heart dies, then what is the point of living anymore? One of the symptoms of the heart dying is not being able to cry. Right? That's why we focus so much on crying on these nights. Like I was just asked by a sister, why do we cry? And I tried to answer this the other night. As in, the symptom of the dead heart is not being able to cry. So when we say, do tabaki, try to cry, it's because now you're trying to come back and revive your heart. You're doing CPR onto your heart when you're doing tabaki and trying to cry for Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. That's why it's so important. When those tears come out, your heart is getting revived again. Right? Because if the heart is okay, you're okay. Just like, in the seas, the whales, the leader whale, if it's sick, it commits suicide. It goes onto the shore and kills itself. Do you know what the rest of the whales do? They follow it. They all commit suicide, even if they're healthy. Right? Because the leader went. And our leader is our heart. So when the heart goes in, if the heart is dying, then we are dying. Then what left is there to live for? Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. But what do the religions of the world, several of the religions of the world, they have something in common. They have a spiritual death before the death of the body. This is different than the psychological death of the heart. This is a spiritual death. It's not a robotic one. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he says, "Mutu qabla an tamutu," which means die before you die. So what does he mean by that? Die before you die. What does that mean? See, there is a religious practice in religions where they let everything go to kill that ego so that your spirit lives on in truth in God. So Christians call it like dying daily, right? St. Paul, he says, "I am crucified in Christ, yet I live, but not I. It's Christ who lives in me." So it's this concept of fana, of annihilating yourself in God. There is no more me. And so many of us, if we were to go onto the spiritual path and try to emulate these teachings that the religions of the world have taught in terms of dying before you die, which is very, very apparent in Islam as well, then you realize that your own life, so much suffering comes because of this I that you have not been able to kill. And most people, they live their lives not being able to kill this I that's inside them. This ana, the I. You know, they say, "A'udhu billah min kalimat ana." I seek refuge in God from the word of I. Whenever you notice yourself saying I know that something may be wrong here. Because that ego is mine, me, my, I. And that creates all the problems when you think about it. The problems that we know, right? All the inheritance problems, you know, our uncles and our aunts and this person and that person, brothers don't talk to each other anymore. And it's mine and me and I. It's always that way. Husband and wife, my kids, whatever it be. It comes from this ego. And our own personal suffering comes from this ego. So when you are sometimes thinking of the past, something bad happened to you when you were younger. You went through a traumatic experience. And years later, you sit down and you think about the past and you start getting feelings again and you start crying and you start feeling depressed. But wait a minute, in reality, did anything actually just happen? Nothing happened. Everything's okay at that moment. It's all in here. And you start feeling sad and your emotions come out, or you get angry. Right? I know a man, whenever he tells me stories of his escapades or arguments or fights, he starts shouting for real, like right in front of me. I'm like, it's over, man, the fight's, it's done. But when he remembers it, he starts shouting again. He gets angry. Right? Because you're thinking of the past and you start playing these movies, right? So you had a breakup, and then you start playing a movie in your head and you add bits and bobs, and it suddenly became Jack and Rose, right? But it wasn't really like that. You just made it like that. It wasn't, and now you're feeling heartbroken. And like a lot of it, guys, I'm not like trying to disrespect anyone's heartbreak if anyone did go through something like that, but a lot of it does come from our imagination. Likewise, when we think of the future. When you think of the future, nothing has happened yet you worry so much about it. Am I going to do it or not? Will I get that grade? Will I get that job? Will I? What am I going to do? Nothing's happened. Nothing's happened at that time. Yet, so much of your worry and anguish and pain, and you can't sleep at night, and you're stressed, and you have to take pills. And why? Because of the ego. When in fact, if you were to just live right now, in this moment, where you just embrace what's happening right now, at every moment you'll think there's nothing wrong with right now. There is nothing wrong. If one makes peace with themselves and is able to defeat this ego and lives only in God and annihilates that self, there is no more stress over the future. There is no more worry over the past. You feel peace. You begin to kill that ego. And so you find a certain liberation in life, a certain joy. And the ego, as much as it can, it wants to kill this. It doesn't want to be killed. It doesn't want to not be there anymore. And as soon as you try to kill this ego of yours, it's going to go crazy and kick and scream. And this has been going on since we were babies, right? When we're born and we can't speak and we want something from our parents, what did we do? We started crying. We started crying and screaming. And so slowly we started realizing, you know, if I kick a fuss, I will get what I want eventually. And so that stays with us into all the age of adolescence and even to now. Right now, we play manipulative games on people that we love. Or we kick a fuss. We want to show that we're angry. Right, I saw a meme yesterday that made me laugh. It was about a man who wrote, when me and my wife aren't talking and she's angry at me, I still have to message her to give her a chance to ignore me or she'll be more angry at me. Right? And this is the kind of way we are with each other, really. It's funny because it's true. This is the way we are with each other because we always try to kick a fuss about things. When really, it doesn't need all that. That's all ego. And that ego should die. And I know this is a big ask for most of us, but it's something that our religion stresses on. And lots of the self-discipline we have in our religion is to get rid of that ego. But that's not really the death that most people think of or contemplate of or are scared of. 1,400 years ago, a man standing in the city of Kufa in modern day Iraq is telling the people, you have been marked for the departure, so prepare yourself. You are about to go on a journey. So Imam Ali alayhi salam is telling this to the people. And these words ring true even to now. Right now, with all our financial responsibilities and all our hopes and dreams and everything we want to do in life, his voice still rings in our heads. Be prepared. You have been marked for the departure. This is usually the death that everyone is scared of. The physical death. The end of you. Which each and every single one of us is going to go through. Now, maybe if not everyone thinks about where they came from, everyone eventually thinks about where they're going. And so the human being has contemplated upon death and life after death and their own mortality. But you see, there is a point in every human being's life where they're supposed to realize their mortality, that I'm going to die. And everyone has it differently. Everyone has it at different points. Some people here might have already experienced it. Others may have not yet. It might have happened in a traumatizing event, in a car accident. Or it might happen when you're at school. It might happen when you're at work, drinking coffee, and you just realize, one day I won't be here. Right? I remember it when I was in Lebanon in 2006, 10 years ago, during the war there. And I remember I was 15 years old and I saw the planes and the bombs coming down and I felt them and heard them and the people dying, and I thought, I'm gonna die. There's a big chance I don't come out of this alive. And I realized my own mortality. And when we do realize that, we're supposed to grab onto it and hold it as much as you can. Because realizing that you are mortal changes your life. Because Rasulullah says, كَأَنَّ الْمَوْتُ عَلَى غَيْرِنَا كُتِبْ. It's as if death has been written for other than us in the way that we treat it. That we just put it aside. We don't have to deal with it. We pretend it's not there. We pretend it's not there. But it's there. It's happening right now, guys. Right now, as we speak. There are calls going across the country. Hello, hi, I'm sorry to tell you, the results came back positive. Your wife has cancer. Right? Or I'm sorry to tell you that your husband just got into a car accident. It's happening right now, all over the world. There are 10 deaths every single second. 10 people just died in this world. 20 people just died in this world. And one day, we are going to be just another one of those numbers. And someone could click their finger and I could be one of the 20 or the 30. See, it's never very far away from us. And so, we must remember death. Life asked death, why do people love me and they hate you? And death said, because you're a beautiful lie and I'm a painful truth. Because death is truth. It's promised to all of us. And that's why a beloved personality, these words, you may have heard them when he says, نهاية المطاف إنك ميت وإنهم ميتون. نهاية المطاف سننتقل إلى عالم آخر إلى دار أخرى ولا مفر من هذا الأمر. He says, at the end of the day, at the end of the road, you will die and they will die. At the end of the day, we are going to another world and there is no escape from this reality. And so one must remember death, memento mori, as much as they can, and to think to themselves, the question of priority in all of our lives should be, how can I not enter the fire? Right? Because when we think fire and hell and they're talking about it at the mosque, and it just seems like a superstition and stories, and the hell doesn't seem real to us. It doesn't seem real to us, but it is. And you create it. Whatever you are, whatever you have inside you, that's what you're building for yourself in the afterlife. If you have those beautiful qualities, you are building a heaven through your deeds. And if you have those ugly qualities and you are manifesting those qualities, you're building your own hell and your own fire. So one must truly think to themselves, how can I, me and my family and my friends and all of those I love, not enter Jahannam? This is not something we think about. It's so obvious. But we're not really scared, because do we believe in God or do we believe in believing in God? There's a difference. There's a difference between believing in God and being part of a community and believing in God. And under which bracket are you? Right? So one must think to themselves, because حُبِّ الدُّنْيَا رَأْسُ كُلْ خَطِيئَةٍ. The love of this world is the head of every wrong, the Prophet says. And what the cure was, the cure of the prophets for the love of this world, which is all from حُبِّ الدُّنْيَا. All the evil that we have is because people love this world too much. So greed and corruption and oppression came from this حُبِّ الدُّنْيا, because there's no limit. So what's the cure of حُبِّ الدُّنْيا that we have in our hearts, that keeps us away from God, that every single sin we make comes back to this root? The cure to this root is dhikrul maut, remembering death. Qatilul lidhat, the killer of the pleasures, they call it. Remembering death. And our perspectives on death are rather funny. Really, if you think about it, if you think how we think of death, you realize how we don't give it this importance, or we are uncomfortable with it, so they put it aside. So there's a story in this English tea party, right, where all these noble elites, they're talking about death. Then what do you think of death? And what do you think of death? And so some of them will talk about resurrection. Some of them will talk about purgatory. But Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Some of them will talk about resurrection. And some of them will talk about purgatory. And then they asked Sir Roderick, right? The elite nobleman, Sir Roderick, how do you feel about death? And so Sir Roderick replied, well, I believe I'm going to heaven and I'm going to be in eternal bliss. But I wish we would not indulge in such a depressing conversation. Right? And it's funny, because why is it a depressing conversation if you're going to heaven and going to be in eternal bliss? Because do you really believe that? Do you really believe in an eternal heaven if it's such a depressing conversation? Because we don't know how to deal with death. And we don't know how to deal with the dying. So you see that cancer patient, the poor soul, who is on the deathbed in the hospital. And the doctor is supposed to save him. But he has nothing else to do now. The doctor, it's out of his power. He cannot revive this person. This person is going to die. Yet all those around him, his family members and his friends, with pale faces and dilated pupils, look into his face and they say, it's going to be okay. You're going to be all right. We're going to go home and everything's going to be fine. And the dying person looks at them and he can tell they're lying. But because they don't know what else to say, because they don't know how to deal with a dead person. Because he sees now this is death. And we don't know how to accept that. Right? This is our perspective on death. We don't think about it. We don't sit down and contemplate over it. Because if we did, we would be different in our lives. We would always have it in the back of our minds that I have a limited time here. And so imagine a different scenario where, you go to the cancer patient, you say, hey, listen, we're going to have a party. I'm going to invite everyone, and we're going to go out with a bang, and they're going to die, and it's going to be great. Right? We don't think that way, right? That's a different way of thinking. But subhanAllah, who can do that for the dying person? A man of faith. A man or woman of faith. So let's say the priest or the sheikh or whoever have you, he can come to the dead person and he can deal with it. Because he can deal with death, because he's a man of faith. A true man of faith. Not by title. And he says to the dying person, hey, listen, buddy, you're going to die. You're going to go meet your Lord now. So let go. And slowly he soothes him into it. He makes him trust slowly. Let go of your possessions. Let go of everything right now. He reminds him. Imam Khomeini, before he died, he closed all the makatib. That's it. They don't accept khums anymore. Right? He had nothing to his name. A small room and a mattress. Nothing. Right? And you just let go of your possessions, because at the end of the day, all the things that you work for in this life, it's all going to go to other than you. It's going to go to your children and the people who inherit it, and they're going to fight over it. Right? So what's the point of all of this? Of holding on so much and not being able to let go and not dealing with death. It's so close, guys. We are young in this room, but next year, wallah, this might be the last Muharram for some of us. I may not be here next year. I might not be. It comes out of nowhere. I think this week in Dearborn, 3 people in their 20s died. In Dearborn. 3 young men from our community died. I was just in Dearborn last month, I remember. I went to see my friends on the way, motorbike accident. He was a friend of the people that I was staying with. Right? His parents were in Lebanon, 20 years old. They had to find out when they're in Lebanon. Imagine that. You're in Lebanon, everything's okay, you're on holiday, and then you find out your son just got into a motorcycle accident and his head is flattened on the floor. So they come back home. That night, when he went out and he put his motorcycle on, he didn't think that this was the final night of his life. He didn't think, I'm not going to get to pray Fajr tomorrow. Not that I'm not going to get the opportunity to pray my last salat tomorrow morning. The salat that all of us just sleep through. Right? He's not going to get that opportunity. It happens all the time. My mother just came back to London. She was on holiday as well in Lebanon. She was with her friend who had just come back from Hajj. And she was with her and she left. And 4 hours later, they messaged my mother and they told her, your friend just died. My mother was in shock. She couldn't believe it. And she started calling her and telling her, pick up, sending her voice notes. Pick up. They're telling me you're dead. They're lying. She was in denial. She's calling everyone liars. She had to calm down. When she came home, now at my house, I see her. I'm trying to stay next to her because it was her best friend. And she's telling me she's seeing life completely differently now. So for the week before I came here, when I was with my mother, when I go downstairs, she's always sitting on the prayer mat. She's reading the Quran. She's praying, crying. Every time I go into the room, there's a dua on. She keeps thinking. I tell her, Mama, it's okay. Just calm down. I try to explain that. She goes, I know, but I just need time to digest this. I was just with her. Where did she go? And one day, that's going to be your best friend. If you haven't already experienced this with your mother or your father or anyone else. It's going to happen to each and every single one of us. And it's a shame that we don't contemplate over this reality more. You know, a man came to the monk and he said, teach me enlightenment. I want to be enlightened. And the monk said, breathe. And the man said, breathe. I'm already breathing. I know how to breathe. He said, no, really breathe. He's like, I know how to breathe. He's like, come to the water. And he put his head into the water and left him there. When he came out, what's the first thing the guy did? Started breathing, right? He said, see, appreciate your breath. We breathe right now, we don't even think about it. We don't even think about how we're breathing through the blessings of God, how our lungs and our heart and everything just works by itself without us consciously doing it. Yet we could be one breath away from death at all times. Your next breath is not guaranteed. Your next morning is not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
هدية على حب الزهراء.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
So, why do we have these perspectives on death? What is the reason that we feel this way? This fear of death, this fear of the unknown. We're not knowing where we're going to go, what we're going to do, what's going to happen to us. You know, it's not time for me to leave yet, right? You're on your deathbed. No, I haven't done it all yet. It's fear of failure. I still have things to do. What are you doing? Why are you taking me now? I still have things to do. It's not up to us. Right? Fear of the unknown, fear of separation, not knowing what's to come. You know, they have this thing called Pascal's wager, and subhanAllah, Imam Ali alayhi salam talks about it as well, so we can even say Imam Ali's wager if you want, where a man came to him and told him, what would you do if there was no afterlife and no God at the end of all this? You would have wasted your life doing all of this for no reason. So the Imam replied to him in his own language. He replied to him in probability, right? He said, true, perhaps I would be at a loss if there was no God and afterlife, but you would be in a bigger loss if there was, right? He spoke to him in the same way in terms of probability, because, okay, well, I didn't lose anything, but if you lived life as if there is no God and there was one, what are you going to do now, right? So it's a bigger risk. So it's like a wager, they call it. Right? A man once said, even if there is no judgment day, we should live life as if there is one. Just because it keeps us grounded, so that we don't go and stray too far off the humanity that we're supposed to grow inside us. So what does Islam say about death? How does it describe death? In the Quran, the term tawaffa is used 14 times to describe death, to refer to death. And tawaffa means to receive something. So tawaffa al-mal, to receive money, right? So tawaffa is used in the Quran referring to death, and it's something we receive. And it says that the angels receive us at the moment of death. What does it mean by that? Receiving? It's that they receive us in our truth, in our reality, what we really are, inside, without anything hidden anymore, where the real you is exposed. The angels receive that. And the hadith describe it as, when you were created with two dimensions, the dimension of the dunya and the dimension of the akhirah, of the afterlife and this life. And when death happens, this is split. So death is the split. Your body remains here, and the real you, the spirit that we spoke about yesterday, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, the spirit carries on. The spirit goes on to the afterlife. Well, to barzakh, and then into the afterlife. But the dunya part stays here. And remember how we said that the angel of death collected the dust from the earth, and your body goes back to the earth, right? The dust goes back to the earth, your spirit goes on. This was only a vehicle this whole time. It was just to push you through. So Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he says that death is just a bridge. And who wouldn't want to go from prison to paradise? If indeed this was your prison and that was your paradise. Some people try to create their own paradise here at the expense of the afterlife. Right? Al-dunya halwaha wa murruha hulum. This dunya, this world, its sweetness and its bitterness is just a dream. All of it is just a dream. Imam Ali alayhi salam says people are asleep and when they die, they wake up. فَإِذَا مَاتُوا انْتَبَهُوا. When they die, they wake up. That's when they see the truth of everything. And even now, we are more absorbed into this world, into the material. You know, we're on Facebook. We're on Facebook. It's not I'm writing a status on Facebook or I'm sending a message. I'm on Facebook. It's me. Right? It's like your ego is in a computer now. You know, it's crazy. So it's so much harder for us to rip away from this ego. This dunya, this is just a dream. All of it. And your spirit is the one that truly lives on. It's like the analogy of the twins in the womb, right? Two fetuses. And one is telling the other, you know, there's a world out there, outside of this womb. And the other fetus is saying, you crazy, this is everything. Right? This is the world. But we know that we were in a world before this one, that womb, that was our world. That was everything. That was where we had our sustenance, where we ate and drank. And we had no idea about this world to come. And then, well, what do you know? Right? And so this world is a womb also. It's a very big one compared to the last one. But compared to the next one, it's very small. It's just like the womb we came from. And it's hard for us to think of this. But really try to think about it, not just in a metaphorical sense. When you were a fetus, when you were a baby in the womb, you had all your respiratory organs intact. Your lungs were there, but the baby does not use them in the womb. Because if it does, just for a bit, it will be the end of it. It does not use those organs in the womb. Yet, as soon as it is given birth and it comes into this world, it has to use those organs, otherwise it dies. Right? It has certain elements inside the womb that it doesn't use. And when in this world it has to use them, it's forced to. So what do we have in this world that we don't use? That's going to be intensified in the next world. Our soul, our heart. Right? We have that now. But we're not using it. And whether we like it or not, in the next world, that's all we're going to have. And if you haven't nurtured it, if you haven't really developed it, then you're not going to know what's happening. You're not going to know where to go. And that's why so many suffer at death, because of how much they hold on to life. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
You know, Mitch Albom, a novelist, he says that all ends are just beginnings. We just don't know it yet. Right? All ends are beginnings. So death itself is not really an end. It's just that bridge that our spirit travels into the other world. So every single night that you are asleep, and the Quran and the narrations testify to this, every single night that we sleep, we are actually dying. When you sleep, they say al-mawtu akhul nawm. Sleep is the cousin of death or the brother of death. When you're sleeping, your soul travels, right? And sometimes that's why you have certain dreams, and we'll speak more about this in the coming nights, although it's still connected to the physical, so sometimes the dreams are connected to what you've eaten or what have you. But in any case, every single night you die, and when you wake up, your soul returns to you. Every single night, every day. So whenever you wake up, that's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving your soul back. So every time you sleep, there are du'as for this as well. Every time you sleep, you don't know if you're going to wake up. If this one day, if you're not going to die of sickness, then that soul will not be returned to you in that morning. One day. That's why people die in their sleep. The soul wasn't returned that day. But the soul isn't inside your body. It's not something that's inside it. We sometimes think that the soul, Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
In any case, so the soul is not inside our bodies. You know, sometimes we think it's the spirit that's in the shape of a human being. If maybe you've watched too much Scooby-Doo. It's not that. It's not this ghost. The spirit is metaphysical. It's not of the material world. The material is something, the metaphysical is something else. The way your consciousness is not material. It's mujarrad an al-madda. It's not physical. And so when you think, so how does the angel of death take my soul? He doesn't come and grab it from your body and take it away. The angel of death is also immaterial. So when they say, how can the angel of death take so many at the same time? Now it's immaterial. It's not regulated by the laws of this time, of this world and its time. You can think of the analogy of the sun and how all the sun rays go into all the different houses at the same time, but that's also a physical thing, so it's not an analogy that you can really correlate 100%. But it's an immaterial thing. And so the soul is what goes to this place that we are always thinking of. You know, this human being always contemplating, unlike other animals, on what is to come. Where am I going to go after this? And so there is this hunger to find out where we're going. You know, Rumi has this story of the elephant and the donkey. And when the elephant sleeps, it always dreams of India, the place it came from, its hometown, its home country. Dreams of India. When the donkey sleeps, it doesn't dream of India, because that wasn't its home. So it's dreaming of home all the time. It's dreaming of the place it came from. Right? Why are we always thinking of that world? Is that where we came from? Yes, it is. It's like a circle. The circle starts with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when He creates us. And we're babies, and we grow up in adolescence, and then we grow up and we get married, and we grow up, we have children, and along the way you want more and more and more. And I think many of us here can relate to what I'm about to say. When your parents, do any of your parents say, you know, one day we're going to go back to Lebanon one day? Right? That's because they think that that's home. They think that's where I'm going to be happy. But they go back to Lebanon, some of them, and what happens? 5 years later, they come back here. Right? Because that's not home. And they go there, they're not sad, because home is at the beginning of the circle with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's home. All of us have the feeling that we want to go home, but home isn't in a country. Home isn't in a material place on this earth. Home is there. Just like when the elephant is dreaming of India. Right? That's why we're always contemplating on where we're going. And we contemplate over immortality, to live forever. And we love that. We want to live forever. We don't want death. If the human being had a way to escape death, he would. He would do anything he could to escape death. No, there's a narration that, a story, I'm not sure if it's attributed to be true, but in any case, let's just take the lesson from it. When Satan said to Adam, do you want to live forever? And Adam said yes, so he said, eat the fruit. Right? Just take the lesson from the story, whether it's true or not. Right? Because we want immortality, we want to live forever, but what is living forever? Would that be good for us, or is death actually a mercy? Is death a mercy or not? There's a film called The Fountain. I'm not sure if anyone's aware of this film. I doubt it. It's not a very famous film. The film is a very philosophical movie. It's one of my favorite movies. And the movie is about life and death. And it revolves around a brain surgeon whose wife has a tumor and she's about to die. So he is trying to figure out a way to save her. How can I save my wife, right? So he says death is a disease and I'm going to find the cure. And that is the perspective of the culture of the world when it comes to death, really, of the modern world. Death is a disease, I'm going to cure it. They don't see death as a rahmah the way Islam sees death as a rahmah. In essence it is. And at the end of the movie, after he lives, he finds a way to stay immortal and his wife dies. And at the end, he keeps trying to revive his wife and he lives for 500 years. And finally, he sees his wife in a vision and she's telling him to finish it, to come back, finish it. And he says, how? Then he realizes the answer's been there this whole time. Death. Death was always the answer. And so he allows death to come to him. You know, you hold on so much to life and you don't realize that death is actually the rahmah. Imagine everyone lived forever. How would this world work? Imagine the oppressor living forever. Imagine Yazid is alive until now. Imagine Hitler is alive until now. Imagine Muawiyah is alive until now. Mussolini is alive until now. Imagine all these oppressors that have been on the earth. Imagine the prisoner is in prison until now. Because who's going to overthrow the oppressor who is only growing with power? If in a limited life he gained that much power, how much power would he gain in unlimited life? Although every single empire on this world has fallen, who is to know what would happen if one was immortal? What if their empire would remain intact and the oppressor would remain oppressed forever? The oppressor would oppress forever and the oppressed would remain oppressed forever. Right? Where's the rahmah in that? But then death comes to them. Eventually, do what you will. But eventually you will have to pay for every single action you committed. Eventually. No matter who you are. So if you want to oppress, you have a limited time that you can oppress in. And you will be recompensed in full. Right? Because that's death. In fact, if you think about it, death is quite noble. If everyone was to be alive forever, then this world would become overcrowded. So when you die, it's a manifestation of a symbol of when you're saying, I'm passing on the torch now to my children. Now you work. Right? I've done my time. Now you saw people come in and take your place. So you do your part and then you leave. Make that part count. You go to the graveyard, you see those dashes, right? 1936 till 1999. That dash was it. That's the entire life. That's it. And if I was to ask most people here, do you remember the name of your grandfather 5 generations up? I know I don't. I don't know it. So that's my great grandfather. I am a descendant of his, but I don't know who he is. I don't know his name. Does that mean 5 generations down, my descendants will not know who I am? So will I have anyone next to me in my grave? Will I have anyone speaking to me, helping me, or doing things for me when I'm in the barzakh? Or in the other world? Who's to know? That dash, make that dash count. Otherwise, what are you living for? Because you're going to end up in the grave just like everyone else. Just like everyone else who's been here. And so we look at these children and we marvel at them, at how beautifully they see the world. They don't have that coldness that we have. They don't care about profit. They don't care about how to use you. You know? They're just coming to you out of genuine curiosity. And we grow colder as we grow. No, I know a man who recently passed away, who was a good man his entire life. And recently I was speaking to his wife. He passed away. She told me he was reaching a stage where he was starting to become so hurt from people. He was seeing the badness in people and he was slowly going to become colder. And he passed away. So she said, perhaps Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took him at the right time, before he became cold. Right? So look at it. The death could be a rahmah at the same time. An opportunity and a chance for us. It's a chance for us. And so when we become cold and hard, these children are still soft and they grow. And now it's their turn to take the torch. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
And so death grants us the opportunity to understand life. Because finally, this is something the ego cannot deal with death. And it's at death that you begin to understand life. So if you can go through a death now before you die physically and try to understand life. Imagine you see the bomb falling and you have a few seconds to understand everything. And you just think, okay, I get it now. But because you're not pressured into that, you never do. You live life sleeping. And when they die, they wake up. Die now. So you figure it out all now. Otherwise, you'll be like the mosquito biting onto the iron bull. No effect. Nothing. The believer views death in a different way. So when there was a man in the time of Imam Hassan al-Askari alayhi salam, and he was dying, he was on his deathbed, and he was so afraid, and he was shaking, and they called the Imam, and they asked the Imam to speak to him. So he came to him, he told him, "Are you afraid?" He said, "Yes, I'm so scared." He told him, "How would you feel if you were covered in dirt, and you went into the bathroom and you showered?" And the man said, "I would feel purified." He said, "That's what's going to happen to you right now. You're just going to become purified," because he was a believer. See, death to the believer is a rahmah. It's mercy to the believer. Rasulullah, may peace and blessings be upon him, he said that you are not created for death, you are created for survival. So, gather your things. Prepare yourself. You have been marked for the departure. Right? Anyone who's gone to go camping gathers their things. We're going somewhere, we're never coming back here. But we just leave it to the last minute. Why? The believer views death in a different way. And that's why when you see those shuhada, those martyrs, and how they're smiling, and they know they're going to die, but they've already died. They've killed their ego inside, so they smile. So Robert Fisk was having an interview, and you can check this out on YouTube, with a man of faith, and he speaks to this man of faith, and he asks him, why do these people go out and get martyred like this? What's the philosophy behind this? And he told him, to explain it to the Western world, he told him, imagine yourself in a sauna, and you are so hot and sweating and you can barely breathe, and the oxygen is so low, and you've been in there for hours alone in this room. And someone tells you outside of the sauna is a nice cold cup of juice, a cold atmosphere, you sit down and you relax, a nice pillow, some classical music. Right? That person in the sauna would want to leave wholeheartedly. He would want to leave welcomingly. He couldn't wait to leave. Right? That's how the martyr views it. It's how the believer sees it for himself, away from this prison, away from it all. And so we understand why the final act in some reports of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in Karbala, you know what the final act was? As shimmer was on the Imam's chest with the sword to his neck, after everything the Imam had gone through, after he had just witnessed the savage massacring of his family, and he was about to be beheaded. You know what his final act was? He smiled. He smiled. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa alihi.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. The family of Imam al-Hussein returned to Medina. In Medina, a man by the name of Bishr is reciting eulogies for Imam al-Hussein, reciting poetry for what happened in Karbala. As he recites, the crowds gather around him. A woman starts to push through the crowd. Let me through, let me see the one who is reciting for Abu Abdullah. She comes to the man, she says, oh man, what happened to Hussein ibn Ali? Is he alive? Please tell me. The man wondered who this woman was. Someone told him, this is Ummul Baneen. When the man realized that this is the mother of Abu Fadil, he immediately said to her, Ya Amatallah, I send you my condolences for the death of your son Ja'far. She told him, man, I didn't ask you about my son Ja'far. I asked you about my son Hussein. He told her, Ya Amatallah, I send you my condolences for your son Aun. She told him, I didn't ask you about Aun. I asked you about Hussein. He said, Ya Amatallah, I send you condolences for your son Abdullah. She said, I didn't ask you about Abdullah. I asked you about Hussein. He said, Ya Amatallah, I send you my condolences for the death of your son Abbas. At that moment she said, you have broken my heart. Tell me about Hussein. He said, Ya Amatallah, I send my condolences for the death of Abu Abdullah. Wa Husseina wa Shahida. This is how the women of the Ahlul Bayt would have their priority being the Imam before their own children. In Karbala, Sayyida Zainab was preparing her sons Aun and Muhammad to go and fight for the Imam. They were two young boys. What kind of mother would dress them up in new clothes? She gave them the swords in their hands. She brought them to the Imam. She said, Ya Hussein, accept these two young boys as a sacrifice from me. He said, my sister Zainab, your husband may not approve. She said, my husband is the one who told me to give them to you. So Imam took the two young boys to Abu Fadil. Abu Fadil Abbas told them, when you go out there, if they come from the right, fight this way. If they come from the left, fight this way. Their uncle Abbas, their uncle Abbas outside to fight for the Imam. They were so small that Imam al-Hussein and Abbas had to pick them up and put them onto the horses. The two young brothers went out to fight against the army. They would work together, defending each other. When other one would come up against them, the other would defend his brother. Until Aoun was struck down, and he shouts out, "My brother Muhammad!" And Muhammad tells him, "I'm coming, brother." And they strike down Muhammad. And they shout out, "Wa Amma, Ya Amma, Drikna, Uncle Hussein, make us victorious." Imam al-Hussein runs down with Abu Fadil to take their bodies back to the tents. All throughout the day of Ashura, they would bring back all the bodies to the tents. All the women would come out to these bodies. They would say to the bodies, "Wa walada." And every time Sayyidah Zainab would be the first one to welcome the bodies. But this time, Sayyidah Zainab wasn't there. She didn't welcome the bodies. She was inside. She was praying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She was in sujood as she said, "Allahumma taqabbal minna hada al-qurban." Oh Allah, please accept this sacrifice from us. Sayyidah Zainab would not cry for her children. Everywhere she went, she would cry only for Hussein. Everywhere in Kufa, in Sham, only Hussein. Never did she mention her children. Never did she want the Imam to feel ashamed or embarrassed. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un. La'anallahu al-zalimin. Ila yawm al-qiyamah. Salawat.